here. Glad I remembered at the last second. Okay. So we'll do the voting member roll call. I'll just call out by town, and if you are part of that town, then state your name and your position. And for those of us who are non-voting members, we'll get to you after that. So, okay, let's start with the town of Benson, the town of Brandon.
Tom Stilpack.
Thank you, Tom. The town of Castleton.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, Peter Mantell, EMC.
Mike Jones,
Okay.
EMD.
Awesome, thank you guys. The town of Chittenden.
Obviously, I'm here.
Bob Case,
Thank you, Jan.
EMC.
Thank you, Bob. Town of Clarendon.
I think you're muted, Craig.
No.
Okay, so
He's here.
we know Craig's here. So we'll move on. Town of Danby. Town of Fairhaven. Town of Hubbardton. Town of Ira. Town of Killington. Town of Mendon. Town of Middletown Springs. And just a reminder to please mute if you're not speaking right now so we can reduce that background noise. Thank you. Town of Mount Holly. Town of Mount Tabor. Town of Paulet.
Jackie Becker, EMD member.
All right, thank you, Jackie. Town of Pittsford. Town of Pulteney. Town of Proctor. Town of, or rather, City of Rutland. Okay, Town of Rutland. Town of Shrewsbury.
Jack Perry, Shrewsbury Fire Department.
Thank you, Jack. Town of Sudbury. Town of Tinmouth. Ray, I believe I saw you. Yes. Oh, yep, you're muted, Ray.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I'm here, Ray Pratt, Tinmouth, EMD.
Thank you, Ray. Town of Wallingford.
Jim Bagnall, EMD.
Thank you, Jim. Town of Wells.
I am present, but I'm
West
the,
Haven.
oh,
And Town of West Rutland.
Michael Skaz is here.
All right, awesome. Thank you. I saw Tom Johnston from Danby came in while we were doing our roll call, so nice to see you, Tom.
Yep, thank you. Good to see you all too.
And let's see, among those that are left, Eric, why don't you go?
Eric Pulver, Emergency Preparedness Specialist for the Department of Health in Rutland.
Awesome, thank you. And Valerie.
I'm Town Health Officer for Wells, but I'm also in MRC.
Awesome to have you, Valerie. Thank you. And have I missed anyone? I don't think I have, but speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, that's good enough for me.
So we have a quorum.
We should, yes.
Okay. All right. So any business we can conduct will be official. Okay, you have the meeting agenda was sent out by Maggie. Are there any additions to the agenda that anyone would like to include? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
So move,
I
Mike
second
Jones.
it.
All right, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 You know, it's hard when you do Zoom. Opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Now we need to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was on September 18th. I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
I motion to approve the minutes from September 18th, 2024.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second it, Mike Jones.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I know
Aye.
it's hard
Aye.
on the Zoom. Opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. We'll now move to the section open to the public. I don't know if there's no guests there tonight from the public, are there, Maggie?
No, I would say not.
Okay, all right. So that leaves us to our representative reports. Bob Morlino, Statewide Emergency Planning Committee. I don't think Bob is on. Do you have any update, Maggie?
Yes, Bob is not on. So the update that he gave me was that, so the last meeting was on October 22nd. And we had, I believe it was Glenn Wallace give his presentation about EPCRA and the LEPC. And there is a presentation to share if any of the REMC members are curious about seeing what exactly was presented. But that's pretty much all in terms of updates. Not too much else to report there.
Okay, thank you. How about, we don't have a a representative in the Thyra SPR category. Anything to report on that?
Nope.
No.
There shouldn't be.
Okay, there's no activity at this time of year. And then Integrated Planning and Preparedness Workshop. Any update, Tom?
I don't know of any changes or any updates at this point.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Moving us in next to our organizational tasks. This is when we appoint a chair, a vice chair, and whether or not the current people that are interested in representative positions continue or if there's new people to appoint. So first of all, we should entertain a nomination for chair. I currently serve as vice chair. I've had some family health issues going on, and I really would prefer to stay in a vice chair role at this point. So are there any nominations for chair?
And just as an added incentive, the role of chair is extremely easy in the REMC. All you have to do is attend the meetings, which is once a quarter, and meet with me about a week or so before to go over the agenda. But that's it. I basically do all the work. So if you're looking for something more low key that doesn't take up too much of your capacity, this is the one committee where you can do that. So please.
You have any volunteers?
That said, if Maggie I could work with Maggie closely. This is Mike Jones. I would do it. I'd take a chair. Is it a year appointment?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, after that, I'd do it for a year.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Mike volunteered. We need a motion to appoint Mike officially in that position.
Make a
I
motion.
motion to appoint.
Mike
Mike.
Jones, okay. Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second,
Jack
okay.
Perry, Shrewsbury.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'm very happy and I'm willing to play the sub role, Mike, but I'm glad that you're willing to take that on. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Perfect. Now with vice chair, does Mike have to do that? I can't ask to nominate myself, can I?
I don't
No,
know
I
if
could-
there's any actual rules about that. I guess
right.
as long as you say you're willing to serve as vice chair again and then entertain that motion.
Okay. I will continue in the role as vice chair. Is someone
Well, if you want
interested
to make it
in?
official, I'll make a motion that for Jan Sedarakis to be the vice chair.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
All right.
Okay, thank you. Now we move to the Thyra SPR representative, and that's the position that Michael Ramsey held previously. Is that right, Maggie?
Yes, that's correct. So the Thyra SPR, as it's called, essentially the state does this assessment of the different threats that the state could potentially face, what kind of risk they pose, and how to make stakeholders more prepared to respond or mitigate to those risks. It's something that was originally done once a year. I think they've cut it back because they have enough information to last them for a while. So another one of those positions that are really low key. If it was active, you would only be participating once a year. But we're not even in that pattern right now. So, just more to hold the seat than anything else at this point.
Is there anyone interested in taking on that role? Last chance. Guess we hold on it for now, Maggie.
We could. I'd really like to get these locked down tonight, though. Just again, one of those positions you don't really have to do much of anything. You're just taking on a title more than
Alright.
anything else.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
I make a
Peter?
motion that Pete
Okay.
Mantello
Okay.
is for that position.
Representative. All right. Motion has been made. Is there a second? Somebody second it.
I second it.
Second it. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Pete Mantello serving as the Thyra SPR representative, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Congratulations and thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Pete.
Okay, now we need to do the integrated preparedness and planning workshop rep, which is currently Tom Johnston. Tom, are you interested in continuing?
Unless I have opposition.
Okay. Is there anyone else interested in taking on that role? Hearing none, is there a motion to appoint Tom?
Make a motion to appoint Tom.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, Tom, for continuing in that role.
You're welcome.
All right, I think this moves us to Maggie's section of the meeting with announcements and roundtable discussion.
Yep, it sure does. And just in case you didn't see, the reason why we're not electing Bob Morlino again for LEPC is because with the recent change we made in the bylaws, we only elect once every 3 years. So his term is coming up to an end on December 25, so we're good for another year on that. Okay, yeah, so moving on to announcements. So there's a lot of emerging developments happening in our field lately, to say the least. And I kind of just want to give an overview of what those changes are and what that's going to look like for our program in the short to immediate term. Because as I mentioned at the last REMC meeting, I've been kind of sparse on the activities lately, and there's a reason for that. So ever since the flooding in July 23, there's been these ongoing conversations on the state level about how we can develop something like a long-term recovery group, but have it be a network across the state. So the central region has something like this pretty well established already. They have a regional recovery officer. I believe her name is Pat. I don't remember her last name off the top of my head. But she does a really good job for the central region. And ideally in the future, we would have our own regional recovery officer who would be leading that same role. So essentially what a regional recovery officer does is play a long-term role in coordinating resources towards long-term resilience, long-term response, or rather long-term recovery, which is not something that really popped up after July 23, at least in the Rutland region. So I've been involved in some of these conversations as they're going on. It's still very much in the development phase. But as of right now, this is what it's envisioned to look like. It would all be under the umbrella of the State Recovery Officer, Doug Farnham. And the circles coming off of these spokes here essentially represent all the different sectors that a regional recovery network would encompass. So everything from restoration of various assets to bouncing back with the local economy to individual and family needs and so forth. Now, during the course of these conversations, there has emerged what you could call some trial runs. So Windham County, for example, is doing a smaller subregion of the South based on watershed. And mostly because the main impact that we have is flooding, right? So they want to do it based off the watershed. Whereas in our region, we're leaning more towards a community-based approach. So something where we don't just arbitrarily mash Addison County and Rutland County together because Addison County doesn't necessarily play nice with us. But sticking with the Rutland Regional Planning Commission sphere of influence and having that be our group. And so this is something I've talked about before, and Eric has talked about it before. And I'm sure I'll be calling on you at some point, Eric, to fill in some gaps for me. But essentially, we are lifting the Rutland Regional Disaster Cooperative off the ground. We were calling it a COAD, which is Community Organizations Active in Disaster. We're not so sure that's an accurate term at this point. But all of that to say that this is the other form of the trial run we are doing for breaking up the southern region. Because the original proposed region was like basically what Taiga had as a jurisdiction before we had more regional coordinators, and that's just a little too large. So this is an ongoing development that I will keep the committee apprised of as anything significant happens. And along with that, we have the COAD, like I mentioned. So there's all these little outcomes that we're trying to work towards right now. And the one that's really important for the committee to be aware of is the one I have circled in red here. So the Rutland Regional Disaster Cooperative, that's what RRDC stands for. So the overarching goal is to understand what other entities and individuals want from this group and to build buy-in to gather additional support. So right now, I'm actually working with a smaller subcommittee, of which Jan is a part, to try to brainstorm ways to get buy-in from the towns. So within the next several months, ideally, right now the plan is for us to make one-on-one visits to all of the towns and to essentially gain buy-in for this concept, which, Eric, I guess I'll turn it over to you for a second. Is there anything you want to add that I haven't covered at this point?
Sure. And thank you, Maggie, for kind of bringing this to the REMC. I think it's an important regional cooperative group. I know several of you in here have kind of been into sort of discussions with me, and as Peter, which I love this, by the way, Peter likes to call me the mad scientist, sort of into these discussions. But I think it's really important that all of the towns kind of sort of understand what we're trying to do here, which is to put it bluntly and put it as simple as possible, is we're looking to do regional disaster management. And so that way all of the towns, nonprofits, faith-based community gathering organizations, and businesses are coming together, they're having conversations, they know each other, and that they will be able to come together when we have a regional or state level disaster again, to kind of be able to respond and then sort of move into recovery. And so what we're trying to do is kind of get this off the ground, get everyone together and talking about these things, because as you all know, talking about emergency preparedness, emergency management is very few people's favorite thing to do. Not everyone is as weird as I am. And so, you know, as long as we can be able to have these conversations, get this buy-in, get everyone talking to each other, that's just going to aid in everything we do in response and recovery in the future. So I'll give it back to you, Maggie, to continue on, because I think you're doing great.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And one more thing I want to add before we move on is that the long-term goal for what we envision for the RRDC at this point is having that central repository to share resources among each other, have a central place for communication, and also have a central place for education. So essentially, we're trying to build in a network where all you have to do is as an EMD tap into it to receive all the benefits, and we would be the ones building out that network for you. So I'll let that simmer for a little bit, let you think that over. And you might be wondering, well, why are we doing anything with a COAD to begin with? This seems like a random development. It's not random. Part of why this came up is because with the increase in disasters we've had, we recognize that there's a gap in immediate response in the region outside of the local liaison procedure, which is really just information gathering anyway from all 27 towns. So looking at that and taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture of what the mission statement of the REMC is, which is essentially being well versed in all 4 stages of emergency management, so the region is well prepared for, can respond to, and recover from disasters. So to spur this discussion, we had our roundtable at our last meeting, right? And so we talked about some areas of concern to kind of pivot what the committee is doing and how we can better meet the needs of the time. So these were a couple of areas that came up. There was a lot of talk about transient populations, some talk about how there's no good planning mechanism for those who have access and functional needs. But perhaps one of the bigger issues that came up was the lack of knowledge in regards to whether that be your everyday operations or participating in the public assistance process or grant rating like HMGP. This is something that our towns struggle with, and this is something that will come up more and more as these disasters happen more frequently. So if we really want to look into building resilience, these are the gaps that we have to focus on closing. So as part of this strategy, we are looking at potential courses of action. And so where the COAD kind of fits into all of this is we're looking for a nexus between these two groups where we can align our activities. And like Eric mentioned, the RRDC would ideally include all of those groups in the community that he mentioned. That being said, we want a way for municipalities to participate without adding any extra burden to your guys' already overextended capacity. And I think the best way to do that at this point, since the REMC is a legislative body that's mandated to exist, is to align our activities and what we're doing with the RRDC. So that way we have you guys participating in the network at least once a quarter, learning about how we can help you out during all phases of emergency management, and do it without asking you to join yet another committee. That's basically the whole idea driving this. But in addition to that, we have a couple of other ideas of things we can start working on based on the feedback we got from the roundtable. So talking about the intersection between transient populations and emergency management, that was something that came up as a potential interest. Scheduling FEMA training courses to address those specific grants for which we're lacking knowledge. Expanding on the public assistance checklist example. So if you attended what was called the Q&A panel in August 23, which was essentially an after action report of those floods, Jan provided us with a really nice checklist of things you need to have in order to navigate the public assistance process successfully. So taking that list and expanding on it and teaching other towns, other EMDs about what you need to do for that could be an idea. So really, this is just a pretty package of what we could do. And because things are so in flux right now, I want to stress this is going to be a year of transition and growing pains. By now, I normally have a full-blown calendar schedule that I've already shared with everyone. We have all of our activities down to the date for what we're doing for the year. I don't have that this year. I don't have that because things are still in flux and we're still trying to land on our feet, figure out where the REMC fits in, where the COAD is going to fit in. And I don't want to waste your guys' time with busy activities that ultimately mean nothing. So I do have a couple of activities tentatively scheduled for the next several months. One of them being, for example, the inclement weather workshop that ended up being a recording back in April. I want to provide an opportunity for people to attend that again in person. We will review the vulnerable populations protocol as we do every year. But other than that, there's a lot of placeholders in the kind of the agenda for what we could do over the next year. And while we do have those initial ideas that I just mentioned a minute ago, getting them locked down and getting them concrete and making sure that relevant to what we want to do is something that's going to take more time than I've had, and I would like to approach this right. So if that means that the first half of the year is a little more quiet in terms of activities, then so be it. I don't think anyone would mind that anyway. That being said, if there's anything that you would like to see us talk about that hasn't been mentioned at this point, whether that's training for a specific topic, or you feel like maybe you want to be ambitious and pull in some of your municipal staff to really get well versed in the other phases of the emergency management cycle, certainly let me know either now or you can follow up with me at any time and we can definitely have a discussion and take that into consideration. But until then, hopefully I will be able to work on a more complete calendar in the next couple of months. At the very least, I will have an email going out soon about the inclement weather workshop that I will be hosting next month in January. So I know I just threw a lot of information at you. Eric, go ahead. You have your hand up. More to say, I presume.
A little bit. I think, Maggie, if it's all right, I have a tentative idea that I came up with that I think I want to kind of get sort of the RAMC, everyone here's thoughts on. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it. This is the space for it.
Perfect. So the tentative idea I have is I think one of the best ways that we can bring everyone together from all of these different sectors is to start having small roundtable meetings with agencies or entities within different sectors. So when I say sector, I mean things like animal welfare. I know we've talked about that. Some of the domesticated animal groups that were in Rutland are no longer here, and I know that's been something we've been talking about. And talking with faith-based and other community gathering organizations to see where they're at, and sort of talk about. One of the big things that came out of North Carolina with the floods there was that churches and synagogues and similar got a ton of donations and weren't really sure what to do with those basic necessities very well. And so we have conversations with them, have conversations with people in the sort of economic sector. So see what like Chamber of Commerce and I don't know why I'm blanking on our economic activity group in Rutland City. I've just blanked on them, but
Cedar?
Yeah, Cedar. I just blanked on that so bad. Have conversations with them, have conversations with schools, including, Vermont State University in Castleton, and see what they're doing and how they can kind of support sort of that regional, work. On sort of some of this stuff. So I currently have about 9 sectors I've looked at. I won't necessarily read them all here, but they're very similar to what I'm saying. And sort of basically have those conversations with them, which will lead to a sort of larger conversation where we bring a lot of these partners from these sectors together and with the municipalities. And we all kind of spend a day talking about what does the municipalities need? Because obviously they're going to be leading response and recovery efforts, and sort of how can these other sort of entities in these sectors support and help and collaborate with the towns to be able to make sure that we are responding in the most equitable and productive way that we can. So I just kind of want to throw that out there, see if there's any thoughts on that. And I see Jan's shaking nodding her head. So that's always a good sign. So anyway, I'm gonna stop talking now and let you all talk about it.
I was
Well,
nodding my, go ahead. Go ahead, Maggie.
Quick clarifying question, Eric. So you're saying that these smaller roundtables would not involve the towns initially, correct? It would just involve these sectors, and then for the large conversation, we'd pull in the towns?
Yeah, because I think obviously we talk about, capacity issues and like we don't want to add more to the town's plates, and you're all volunteers or you have, secondary jobs or full-time jobs that you can't necessarily pull yourself all the ways away. And so I think in my mind right now, the idea of these sector conversations is to see what those entities within these sectors think that they can do. And then we all come together. And so that way they can say, hey, transportation, for instance. So we get like, LAS, and they come in and they say with the buses, we'd be able to move people between, town shelters to the regional shelter or something like that. I'm just kind of spitballing here. And so that's kind of where I was thinking to kind of come to a table with the towns then at the end and sort of just talk for a day about what they can do and what the towns will need.
Okay, just wanted to get a clear picture on that. And might I also suggest as a consideration that when we have that bigger meeting, perhaps that's one of the times we move our committee meeting to earlier in the day and we just have it all on one day, like we're saying, so that we're not asking the towns to do any more than they're usually doing.
Yeah, 100%. Those logistics we can kind of work on. So that's perfect. Good idea, though.
Eric, I'll just add, I think that's a really good idea. In a discussion we had earlier this morning, sorry, the clock is going off. We were really talking about what towns need to know is what are these agencies going to be able to do to help us? So once we know what that help is going to be, then it's much easier and you're more willing and interested in calling them in for assistance. So I think that's going definitely in the right direction.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay. Wow. Okay, Maggie, anything else you wanted to add? Or we're at the end of the agenda.
Not unless anyone else has any final comments. But other than that, next meeting is March 19th, 2025. Yes, I spotted all those errors I put out in the initial agenda after I sent it. But we're good. So third Wednesday in March. And now we need a motion to close the meeting. So Jan, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I am motion.
Okay, I have a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay.
I second it, Mike Jones.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
All right.
All right. Well, have a great holiday season, everyone. And we'll see you in March, if not before, at other meetings. And thank you for taking time.
Yep. Thank you. Stay safe tonight.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thanks, Jan.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Okay.